Hey guys, let's cover rotations because there's been some confusion over it. So first, I wrote the rules to the right over here. Oops, right here. And so we start with 90 degrees clockwise. Now, 90 degrees clockwise and 270 counterclockwise are the same thing. Let me explain that real quick. Oops. Okay. So I just gave you kind of an example of a coordinate plane. We have our x-axis and our y-axis. And then we have quadrant 1, which is positive, positive, right? Because the x and the y are positive. Quadrant 2, where the x is negative and the y is positive. Quadrant 3, where both x and y are negative. And I think I said it wrong. Sorry, quadrant 2 is negative for x. And then quadrant 4, where the x is positive, but the y is negative. Okay, so I have it written down right there. Now, let's talk about degrees, 90 degrees versus 180 versus 270. Let's just say, and we're gonna continue with this logic that, let's just say we start in quadrant 1, and then we jump to quadrant 2. That's a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation, and counterclockwise goes the opposite direction of a clock. So it goes, again, the opposite direction that a clock would go. Clockwise is in the same direction that a clock would go. So if we start in quadrant 1 and we go 90 to get here to quadrant 2, if we go to quadrant 3 after that, that would be 180 because 90 plus 90 is 180. And then if we go to quadrant 4, that would be another 90, which would add up to 270. And then, of course, if we went back to quadrant 1, that would be a full circle, which is 360 degrees. But also 90 plus 90 plus 90 plus 90 is 360. So every time you jump quadrants, that's 90 degrees, as long as it's right next to it. Okay, so let's just get into these examples. Looking at number 1, rotate the figure 90 degrees, and all of these are going to be counterclockwise. It says it right here, counterclockwise. So that means we're going to be using this rule because it says 90 degrees counterclockwise. So that means it's going to be negative y comma x. So let me kind of do this here. So we start with xy. That's the normal, that's the original, and we're going to end up with negative y x. All right, so I'm going to put my arrow under each, or next to each of these. So a prime, b prime, c prime. I'm just going to use the rule. I'm not going to use my little trick that I showed you guys because the rule I think is simpler to understand. All right, so x and y clearly switch places, and then the original y is going to change signs. So instead of -2, -1, it would be -1, -2. They switch places, but the original y is going to change signs. So instead of being -1 now, it's just going to be 1. For b prime, the -1 and the 3 switch places, but again, the original y value is going to become the opposite. So since it was a +3, now it's a -3. And then for c prime, they switch places. So that's going to be 1 and 3. But again, the original y value, which was +1, now becomes opposite, which is -1. So I'm going to graph those 3 new points. 1, -2, which is here, and that's a prime. -3, -1, so 3 to the left, 1 down. That's b prime. And then c is -1, 3, so that's 1 to the left and 3 up. And that's c prime. And then I'm going to connect these points. And there you go. That's how you do that. All right, so this shape just went around 90 degrees counterclockwise. So let's take a deeper look. B went from here to here. That's a 90-degree jump. A went from here to the next quadrant. That's a 90-degree jump. C went from here to here. That's another 90-degree jump. Each point jumped to the next quadrant going counterclockwise. Number 2, rotate the figure 180 degrees. Okay, so the rule for 180, let me zoom in so I can write that down. The rules are just written at the top. So don't forget you start with the original x and y, and then that's going to be negative x, negative y. So for 180, they do not switch places. So make sure you are paying attention to the rules in your notes. All right, so, oh my goodness. So we have A, B prime, C prime, and D prime. So all we're going to do is change the signs. I know that there's a negative in front, but the negative doesn't necessarily mean you make it negative. It means that you change the sign, you make it opposite. So for A prime, that's going to be -1, -4, because they both started off positive. Same thing for B, so -3, -2. For C, however, this first 2 is now negative, but the second 2 was already negative, so now we make it positive. And then for D, we have -3, 1, so that's going to be 3, -1. Let's go ahead and graph these. So we have -1, -4 for A prime. We have -3, -2 for B prime. -2, +2 for C prime. 3, -1 for D prime. Let's go ahead and connect those points. Okay, and there's our new shape. All right, so again, let's double check. So D started here. It went 2 quadrants around. So that's 180, right? Because it went 90, then another 90. A, same thing, started here. Then it went 2 quadrants around. That's 90 plus 90, that's 180. B started here, and then it went 1 quadrant over, or 1 quadrant around, then 2 quadrants around. That's 90 and 90. And okay, so you see where we're going with this? All right, now for number 3, rotate the figure 270 degrees. And again, all of these at the top are counterclockwise. That's what the instructions told us. So for this one, it's going to start with x comma y. And for the new one, it's going to be -y x. Just kidding. It's going to be +y -x. Sorry about that. All right, so again, if you had a brain fart just like I did, that's totally fine. Just come back up here to your notes and look. That is 270 counterclockwise. 270 counterclockwise. All right, so we have y. I'm sorry, to switch places. So for A prime, B prime, and C prime, I'm just going to start by switching the places. So now the 2 is going to go first for A prime, and the -3 will go second. However, don't forget that x, or the original x value, now has to change. So since it was a -3, it's not going to be it's now going to be a +3. For B, we had 0, 1, so now we're going to have 1, 0. And 0 was the original x, but 0 has no positive or negative. It's just 0, so it's going to stay like that. Then for C prime, put the -3 first and the -2, so they switch. But again, you want that original x to change sign. So since it was negative, now it's going to become positive. Okay, so now we're going to graph. A prime is 2, 3. So there's my new A. B prime is 1, 0. There's the new B value. And then C prime is -3, 2. So there is my new C value. I'm going to connect the points. Okay. So we were supposed to go 270 counterclockwise. So let's see how that looks. So A started here, and then it went 270 counterclockwise. So 90, another 90, and then a third 90. So good. That's 90 plus 90 plus 90, which is 270. And we went around the opposite direction of a clock. So that's counterclockwise. B started here, then it went, try that one more time. B started here, then it went 90, 90, 90. So that's 270. C started here, then it went 90, 90, 90, which is 270, and it ended up right there. So we're good to go. All right. So those are your examples for the first section. Let's go down to clockwise. All right, so for a 90-degree clockwise rotation, the rule is the same for a counterclockwise 270 rotation. So that means it's going to be y negative x again. Okay, so we have a prime, b prime, c prime. Okay, so again, switch the places of the numbers. So now we have -1, -4, but the original x value, which was -4, is now going to change sign. So that'll be +4. This would be -2, -2, because if they switch places, it's still the same, but this one needs to change signs. So now it's -2, +2, and then same kind of situation for this one. It was -5, -5 when you switch the places, but the original x value needs to now become a positive x because it was negative. Let's go ahead and graph these. We have -1, +4 for a prime. We have -2, +2 for b prime. -5, +5 for c prime. And let me move that out the way. Connect the dots. Okay, and let's kind of double check what's happening here. A started here, and then we went clockwise 9 degrees because we went from one quadrant to the quadrant right next door. That's 90-degree jump or 9-degree rotation. C started here, and then again made a 90-degree rotation. B started here, and made a 90-degree rotation. Just went over one quadrant, so we're good. All right, number 2, rotate 180 degrees. All right, so we have the same rule as above. So we start off with x, y, and the rule is just to keep them in the same spot, but change the signs of both x and y. Okay, so for a prime, that's going to be -1, +1, because remember we changed the sign of both. They do not switch places though, not for 180 degrees. Then we're going to have -4, +3 for b prime, and for c prime, -3, +4. We're just changing the signs. All right, let's go ahead and graph -1, 1, which is a prime, -4, 3, which is b prime, and -3, 4, which is c prime. Let me get this out the way and graph. All right, so as you can see, this shape went around once and twice. That's 90, 90, which is 180. And I'm sorry, we're going clockwise, but it's the same thing either way. So once and twice. Same thing for C, went around one quadrant, 2 quadrants. That's 90 plus 90. And then for point B, went around one quadrant, 2 quadrants. The farther away a point is from the origin, the bigger the circle is that it makes, but it's still the same rule. Number 12. Now we get to do a 270 clockwise. So that's going to start with x, y as usual. And then we're going to go to -yx. So they change places for 90. The numbers change places for 90 and 270, but not for 180. Keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm going to switch the places of the -4 and the 4. So now it's going to be 4 and -4. I just switched places. However, the original y value needs to change signs. So that'll be -4, -4. For this one, change the places of the numbers. So that's going to be 2, -1. And now the original y value, which was 2, is now going to change signs. So now it's -2. For this one, switch the numbers. So now it's going to be 1, -3. But we do need to change the sign of the original y, which was 1. So now it's -1. And then we're going to go ahead and graph. So we have -4, -4. A prime. Then we have -2, -1. B prime, and then we have -1, -3. Oops, I went too far, sorry about that. -1, -3 for C prime. And let's go ahead and graph. And that's it. All right, so if you look here, point A went 90, another 90, and then a third 90. That's 270. B, same thing. We went 90, another 90, and then a third 90. So it's 90 plus 90 plus 90 is 270. Same thing for C, 90, 90, and then it ended up here 90. So that's 270. Okay, so that's pretty much how you do that section. Very simple stuff. Last section. Perform the following translation. So if you look, even if it didn't say translation, you should automatically know, but that's okay. Let's just do it by looking at the rule. Keep it simple. So we start with the regular x and y. All of these are the originals, or the regular, the original x and y, excuse me. And then this little arrow indicates that we are transforming the points. So a prime, we're going to take that 0 for a and subtract 3. So that's going to be -3. And then we're going to take that 0, the other 0 for the y, plug it in for y, and that's going to be 0 plus 5, which is 5. So that's how you can do translations, by using the rule. And then for point B, we're going to now take the 1, plug it in for x. So 1 minus 3 is -2. Then we're going to take this -2 for the y and plug it in here. So that's -2 plus 5, which is 3. And then for C prime, we have 3. So erase that. For x, so we're going to plug that in here. 3 minus 3 is 0. Then we have -1 for y. We're going to plug that in right here, and that's going to equal 4. So -1 plus 5 is just 4. Okay, so that's how you can use the rule for translations. You don't have to scoot it over by counting, but you can if you want to. All right, so now let's plot these numbers. So for A, we have -3 and 5. So we go 3 to the left, 5 up, and there's the new A value. The new A. And then B is -2, so 2 to the left, +3, 3 up. That's B prime. And then C is going to be 0, 4, so that's right there. So 0 means you don't go left or right, and then 4 means you go 4 up. So there you go. If you didn't feel like doing that, you could have just counted. So starting from A, 1, 2, 3 to the left, because the rule says -3, right? So that just means 1, 2, 3 to the left. And then it says up 5, so that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you still end up right here. So you could have done it that way as well. But if you are a person who gets confused easily, I think it's easier for you to just use the rule all the time. Don't make it difficult for yourself. Number 20, translate the figure along the given vector. So for this one, we go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and write 1, 2, 3. So we're going to do that for all of the points. Let me use a different color. So we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 for point A. And then for B, down 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1, 2, 3 to the right for point B. And then for point C, 1, 2, 3, 4 down, and then 1, 2, 3 to the right, and that's point C. I'm going to get rid of all of this because it's just in the way, being confusing. And then there you have your new triangle, which should look exactly like the original triangle, just in a different spot. Okay, and then you can put the new coordinates here. So that's A prime, B prime, and C prime. So this one we did differently than the last one because it was giving us a vector. So it was just easier to count for this one, in my opinion. All right, so the new A value it's at -1, 0. So don't forget you start at the origin, and we had to go left 1. So that's going to be -1. And then after we went left 1 time, we did not have to go up or down, so that's going to be 0 for the Y value. B prime, again, you start the origin to count. We had to go down 1, 2. So since we didn't have to go left or right first, Don't forget, left and right always goes first. Then you put a 0 for the x value, and since we had to go down, that's -2 for the y value. For C, you start at the origin, you go to the right 1, 2, and down 1. So that's going to be +2, -1. And there you go. Number 21. Translate the vector for -4, +3. So if you want to, you can literally just do x minus 4, y plus 3, like we did for number 19. Or you can count, I'll leave that there. Or you can count for, like we did for number 20 for this one. It's up to you. So you could just say, okay, I'm just going to go 4 to the left, 3, 4, and 3 up, boom, boom, boom. Or you can use the rule and then just write your points from there. I'll leave that up to you, but I think you guys should be okay with that. All right, number 22, reflect through the origin. I think you should use the rule for this because I don't trust you to remember the little trick that I showed you. So the rule for reflection, look back at your reflection notes. X comma y, and that's going to change to -x, -y. And then just change each of these. So since both x and y now become negative, you just change the sign of both of them, just like we did before. And then graph them. Yes, you have to graph them. I'm not going to graph it here, but you need to graph it. Number 23, reflect the figure over x equals -1. So don't forget, x equals -1. Look at the x-axis, then find -1 and draw a line through it. That's how you graph that. And so now we're going to reflect across that line. So we see that point A is 1 space away. So we're going to go 1 space away in that direction. So new A is right there. And then we see that point B is 2 spaces away from the line of reflection. So we're going to go 2 spaces over there in that direction. That's B prime. And we see that C is 4 spaces away from the line of reflection. So we do 4 on the other side of the line of reflection. And then that's C prime. Connect your dots. And that's it for that. Okay, since we weren't given any coordinates, I'm not going to worry about asking you to write down the coordinates. All right, number 24, reflect the figure over y equals -1. I'm not going to graph this one for you. Actually, yes, I will. Okay, because we have an interesting looking one, I guess. So the line of reflection, it's at y equals -1. So here's y. Look for -1 on the y-axis, which is right there, and then just draw a line through it. Try that again. Okay, so there's your line of reflection right there. And then you would just count the distance. So A is 2 units away. So there's your new A right there, because it's also 2 units away, sorry. B is exactly on the line, so it stays on the line. So that's A prime, and then B prime stays right there, because again, it was on the line of reflection. And then C is 1 unit away on this side, so we go 1 unit away on the other side of the reflection line, and there's C prime. Connect the points, and there you go. All right, number 25. What is the equation of the line of reflection? So all you need to do is write the equation of the line right here. So don't forget, y equals mx plus b is the easiest or the fastest way to do that. So I'm going to just write that up here. Y equals mx plus b. So m is the slope, and I see some points here on the line. So that's clearly the slope is rise -2, run 1. Rise -2, run 1. So the slope looks like -2 over 1, which just equals -2. And then the y-intercept is right there at +2. So this is going to be y equals -2x, and then +2 or +2 for that. All right, I'm going to get rid of this, because now I need to reflect. Actually, nope, don't even worry about that part. You don't even worry about it. All right, number 26. Draw the line y equals negative x and reflect the triangle. I've already shown you how to do this. You have notes on how to do this. But just in case you forgot, this is what the line looks like. So don't forget you can use the rule. So the rule is x, y, and then they're going to switch places and become opposite. Okay, so you can finish that on your own. Number 27, reflect the figure over this line. Nope, don't even worry about number 27. There you go.